What if you could lead more effectively and go home on time? Welcome to the Lightbulb. I'm Zoe Thompson, leadership and performance coach, and each week I bring you 3 practical insights from my work helping impact-driven leaders transform from reactive to intentional leadership so they can finish work on time and take guilt-free time off, creating success that feels as good as it looks. Let's jump in. Welcome back. Episode 35. It's been a different kind of week. Strangely, this doesn't happen very often. I haven't had any one-to-one client sessions this week. I did have one. They rearranged due to an unseen work commitment that came in last minute. So yes, it doesn't happen very often. What I have had this week is the challenge has been going on. We had the AlumnEYE call on Tuesday of this week, and also I went to Swindon on Thursday evening for a CIPD meeting. So this is the professional network for people who work in HR. And I went there to do a talk on building resilience. So my light bulbs this week are all coming from that work. So light bulb 1 for me this week, delegation. Had a really interesting conversation during the AlumnEYE call. It's the first one since the last cohort graduated. And we were talking about how that now they've got a little bit more time in their calendar to be able to focus on strategic tasks and strategic projects. What are they spending time doing? And one of the participants, they implemented into their daily routine, do it, delay it, or delete it. It's a month since the program finished, and they're still showing up in the same way. They're still showing up every morning. They check through what is on the list for that day, and they ask that question. What do I need to do? What do I need to delay? And what do I need to delete? And that, for them, is what is freeing up time to work on strategic tasks, which was their goal when they joined the program. And it's great to hear that they don't have to think about it anymore. It's just what they do. They show up, and that's how they start their working day. We were talking about what they're now going to be reinvesting that time in, because they joined the program. They said that that's what they wanted to do, that they didn't have a challenge in going home on time. What they did want to do was find time to be able to work on the longer term strategic tasks. So that's what we were talking about. And they were talking about delegating with purpose, that now they are in a good position and they've got a little bit more time. They have started to explore succession planning for their organization, and then how they can develop individuals within their organization through delegation. Now, for those of you that are in the leadership community, or those of you that are working with me one-to-one, there is a workshop on delegation in the resource library. So if this is something that is of interest to you, head there, go and check it out. If you are not in the community, then it's another reason to sign up and join us, is because we've got workshops like this. And actually next week, the workshop will be on meetings. So if you struggle with meetings taking up a lot of time and space in your calendar and not a lot gets done, then the community is the place to be this month. But this is what we were talking about. There's often 2 reasons for delegating tasks. One, in that it does get something off of your plate. But for me, the shift in thinking is thinking that delegation is a way to develop your team, to develop somebody else's capability. So it doesn't need to come back to your plate. When we delegate to offload, which is how a lot of people see delegation, they see it as offloading a task onto somebody else's plate. And a lot of leaders will say they don't feel comfortable with that because they recognize that actually their teams have got full plates. There isn't a lot of capacity on their plates to be able to do that. And so there's an element of guilt, or there's an element of overthinking that they don't want to overload somebody else when the intention is to take something off of their plate. However, what we were talking about is the type of delegation when you are identifying opportunities for individuals within your team. And this is an investment in the person who is going to take on that task. So it does connect to that longer term succession planning. Rather than waiting until you need somebody else to do that task, you're looking at who you have within the team, who wants those opportunities, who wants to develop in that area, and how you can take some time to develop them, teach them, give them the knowledge, give them the skills, give them the confidence to be able to learn that activity. Difference in the short term is pretty small, but the difference longer term can make a huge difference. And we know because we know that it's a human psychological need to develop. We know that people in their roles, even if they're not looking for promotion, they need to feel that growth. They need to feel that things are changing, that they're learning more. They want the challenge. And some will want it more than others. And that's the questions that you can ask in your one-to-ones to identify who is looking for more. How might this fit into their long-term plans? So forget your long-term plans and your succession planning for the business. What about their longer-term plans? Where might there be opportunities for them to develop? Where might you be able to delegate a task that helps them to develop in the role that they're in, but also for the longer term for them as well? There's an investment there, and it shifts how you see delegation. There's something to think about there. If this is something that you want to explore more, have a look at the community, go and check out that workshop, or if you've got a question, feel free to ask. Remember the saying, a great leader creates leaders, and that's a measure of impact. And a lot of you, I know, will have a legacy around how you impact the people who report into you. You want your leadership to be one of legacy, and delegation for development is a big part of that. Not only then do you create the legacy of the long-term development of your team and your department, you're also looking at the legacy of the long-term development of individuals within your team. Okay, Lightbulb 2. Now, this came up while I was recording module 2 for the 12-month leadership program that currently delivering for Breast Cancer UK. We are now into module 2. And the focus for this module is taking them from doing to leading. We've been talking about that evolution of their own leadership from being the successful high performer that then went for promotion to now stepping into that leadership role and being able to identify what good looks like in leadership. And at that leadership level, the interesting thing with this is that often it's linked to identity. It's linked to habits and behaviors, but also how people see themselves. And we have an identity with our professional reputation. We see ourselves as somebody who is reliable. We see ourselves as somebody who is helpful. We see ourselves as somebody who has all the answers. And often it's this identity and professional pride and professional success that has aided our promotion. And as a high performer in a team, these are great skills to have. At leadership level, they can become liabilities. We need to look at what success looks like for the level we are currently at. Because when we step into leadership, and if you are in leadership and stepping into senior leadership, it changes again. We need to identify what does success look like and what are the habits and behaviors and identity that we need to have to be successful at that level. Now, the challenge here is that these habits have genuinely served us. So it's very hard to see them as a negative because they've been very good to us for a long time. They've helped us to be successful. And a lot of leaders don't realize that that evolution is needed. So it's not until things go wrong that they recognize that something needs to change. Now, the benefit of the people doing this program is that we are calling it out early and we are working on it early. We're not going to wait until this is a challenge for them. We are visiting this now very early on in the program so that they can identify this next level identity of their leadership. What does good look like and how will they know they're being successful at this level? If I go back to describing what I've just talked about, so having all of the answers, being quick to be helpful, being reliable, being the person who knows all of the things and everybody comes to. When you're part of a team, that is a great asset. As a leader, this is where it can start to go wrong. You're exhausted because everybody's coming to you. Your team are over dependent because it's quick and easy for them to come to you for the answers, and you keep giving them the answers. And so you spend all day supporting everybody else, which is great, until you haven't got your work done and your boss is coming to you with critical work that is now getting close to the deadline, or at worst, missing the deadline. And this is the challenge for people who then end up staying late. This is the challenge for people who end up working weekends, because their days are full with being super helpful to everybody else and not doing what they are paid to do. And this is why it becomes a liability rather than an asset. What good looks like at one level can be a liability at the next. If you are in a first team leader role, what good looks like could be a liability when you step into a senior leadership role. Things need to change. So recognizing what success looks like becomes really important. For most leadership levels, success is answering fewer questions and asking more. Leading others to develop their skills, develop their knowledge, develop their confidence to take action, rather than doing more yourself. And this is the shift from reactive to intentional leadership. We have to sit and look at what we want to change. We have to look at what we're going to leave behind because it's no longer serving us, and what we want to step into and become confident with, because that is what is needed at the level that we are now at. I'm going to share the question that I ask in the workshop because I think it's a question that will help you too. I want you to think about one habit that served you brilliantly before you stepped into leadership. What's the one thing that you had that professional pride, the one thing that you were known for that was a huge asset to you? Probably played its part in you getting promoted. And I want you to ask yourself whether or not that is still an asset or whether that has become a liability in the role that you are now in. What needs to shift? What would good look like now? Take the value behind that behavior. What is it that's important to you? And how does that look at the level that you are now at? And I'm hoping that that is as useful to you as it is to those on the program. Okay, Lightbulb 3. Resilience. This was why I went to Swindon to talk to different HR leads about resilience. And it wasn't just personal resilience. I was talking about personal resilience, but also about resilient teams and resilient organizations, because resilience is a learned behavior for individuals. It's systemic for teams and organizations. A lot of people talk about resilience being tough. Actually, a lot of it is building conditions, having those conditions in place, having systems in place, having processes, procedures that make the organization and the team resilient. It's not a personality trait for individuals, and it doesn't happen by chance for organizations either. A lot of organizations tell me that they want to increase the resilience of individuals within their teams, and that's a good thing to do. That is not what makes a resilient organization. It makes an organization of resilient people. And there is a difference. A resilient organization is very different to an organization that is full of resilient individuals. They are not the same. So when I get approached by different organizations, they will often talk to me about training courses, well-being, individual support. They want to increase the resilience of individuals. What I then talk to them about is the importance of creating a culture and looking at how they as an organization and how their teams need to become more resilient. Otherwise, it's like pouring water into a leaky bucket. You've got very resilient individuals, but the system is not in place to support them. I shared last night a 7 C's framework, 7 topics beginning with C that help to increase resilience, both on an individual level and a team level. Competence, confidence, connection, character, contribution, coping, and control. Some of those you would expect to see in there. Some of them are slightly unusual. They all feed in. It's not my model. What I've done is taken the model that is used for building resilience in young people, and I talk through it from the lens of organizational resilience. The conversation that happened at the end of the workshop was around culture. And bearing in mind, this is a room full of HR leads, people leads, it's understandable for them to be thinking at an organizational level, and they have responsibility for teams. And also we know that the people who deal with people also need a high level of resilience. So it was interesting in those discussions to see people thinking it through with those different hats on, for them as an individual, for them as a leader, and for them in their HR roles. We talked about acceptance and how that feeds into culture. What is acceptable? What is it we allow? What is it that we encourage? And also as leaders, how do we show up when we are under pressure? How do we demonstrate what good looks like when pressure happens? And if we absorb everything, don't talk about it, don't share it, don't work it through, don't ask the team for help, don't pull together as a team, and we stay late and we never switch off, and we're sending emails at all hours, and we're logging on a Saturday to catch up, and we're logging on a Sunday to try and get ahead. If we never switch off, if we don't have those coping measures and healthy coping measures in place, then that becomes the norm. That's what people see, and that's what people follow, and that's what creates the culture. For leaders, it's really important that they have to lead by example. They want a resilient team that isn't going to burn out. They have to do all of the things that they need their team to do, to communicate, to take control, to connect with the rest of their team, to be confident in their competence, to understand how their character feeds into it and what their contribution is and why it matters. It starts with the leader. They look to you as a leader when the going gets tough. They're looking to see how you're responding to it. That's what teaches them is the norm. So it starts with you. When you look at the culture within your team, is it by design or by default? And how do you show up and demonstrate resilient behaviors that your team learn from? Within your team, what's the biggest gap? Is it competence, confidence, connection, character, contribution, coping, or control? Some food for thought right there. 3 light bulbs, all from creating content, delivering content rather than coaching this week. Still very similar to what comes up in coaching sessions. What you delegate shapes your team's capability. What you hold on to shapes your identity, and the culture you build or don't build is what shapes everything. I would love to know what your light bulb is from my 3 light bulbs this week. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are and how you're going to turn that into action. What's your light bulb? What's your next steps? This is how we go from overwhelmed to intentional. I would love to hear what you're going to do differently. And I will be back with you next week for another episode. And those are your 3 takeaways for this week. Before you go, ask yourself, what's my light bulb moment from this? And now that I know what I know, what will I do differently? Choose one action, however small, and commit to it. That's how overwhelmed and reactive becomes aligned and intentional. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next week on the next episode of The Light Bulb.